All right, it's Keith Eigel with the Leaders Lyceum. Welcome back to Weekly Thought Fuel, and I am thrilled again to have Karl Kuhnert with us on this video series. Again, as much as we miss Sarah, we're going to plow through this series here, and
it's so good to be with you, Keith.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with you. Hey, we're talking, as we said last week, we're talking through things in each one of these chapters that we think could be blown out a little bit on these videos, or things that were interesting to us, or things that come up as questions a lot in the groups that we do. And so as we're now in chapter 2 really overviews the levels, and the idea with overviewing the levels is giving people an early chance to connect with something that's oftentimes not very easy to see. We talk about lateral and vertical development a lot, and we talk about lateral development being this acquisition of knowledge, skills, and abilities. You've talked about it as information, gaining information.
Exactly. And you know, it's like watching television, watching the news, reading a book. What we're doing is essentially gathering information.
And how's that different than vertical development?
Vertical development is understanding. That is really getting a handle on what that information means and using it to change who you are.
Ooh, and that's key, to change who we are. And that's this idea of leader levels and vertical growth and changing our understanding in ways that become more mature and more effective over time. You know, one of the ways that actually our understanding was changed after we wrote the book is Karl and I were both exposed to a book that a guy named Richard Rohr wrote, R-O-H-R.
Yes.
Franciscan monk, by the way. Pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Wrote a book called Breathing Underwater. And in this book, what he detailed were the 12 steps of addiction recovery, but how they apply to all of us,
yes.
Not just people who are overtly addicted to a substance in some way. And in the preface, he says we are all, at minimum, addicted in some way to our own way of thinking. And my immediate thought was, okay, this is vertical development. This is why vertical development is sometimes so hard.
Correct. And I thought it was very insightful on his part, is that the first step in any 12-step program is understanding that you have an addiction.
You have an addiction.
That you have a problem.
Yeah.
Right? And it's really brilliant because that essentially is that understanding, right, is vertical development.
Yeah. So what we've done in the book, actually, is we have, especially in this overview chapter, is we've given what we call the 30,000-foot view of these different levels of understanding, these leader levels. And in the leader levels, it identifies assumptions that are true about each level, like at level 2, as we've talked about in previous videos, this idea of winning and losing. At level 3, the idea of needing to be connected or people-pleasing in some way, or over-identified by our role or the things that we do. And at level 4, the knowing who we are and how we like to get work done.
How we add value.
And how we add value at level 4. All of these have assumptions, but in Rohr's vocabulary, it's what we're addicted to.
Yes. And so a good example, I mean, of this is, you know, when we think about addiction, let's just use this metaphor for a minute. When we think about addiction, what do we know? Well, the first thing we know is that if you're addicted, you don't know you're addicted.
And you got to acknowledge that you are.
You've got to acknowledge that you are. The second thing is that if you're addicted, you're missing out on the rest of life. Right? You're missing out on a lot of life.
A lot of life.
A lot of life. And what's happening is because of your lens and the way you're seeing things, that there's a lot that you're missing.
So as we go forward in the weeks, we're trying to give you a little something to do each week to just think about over the upcoming week. I think in light of what we've laid out in chapter 2, it's a good opportunity to maybe reflect on the addiction that you might have, the assumptions of your current lens.
For example, what addiction do you hold right now about work? How do I get ahead at work?
Yeah.
What do you do if you're addicted to level 2, right? What are you thinking about? What you're thinking about is, how do I get ahead here? Who do I have to overcome to get what I want? How do I have to win?
And it goes on through level 3.
And it goes on 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
And the thing about addiction, right, just like leader levels, is that they're hard to leave behind, right? And just like addiction, you have to have vertical development in order to leave those prior assumptions behind.
So there's something to think about for the upcoming week. So until we see you again, I hope you have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.